But I was always more of a bit of a solitary pursuit kind of guy. I would play with the rest of the guys, but I would often strike out on my own, go to the woods behind the school. There were creeks and small ponds where I would take a piece of cloth and fish and catch some tadpoles, catch some zebrafish, bring them home, put them in a small mason jar with water, and we'll watch them and catch. So that's what brought me deeper and deeper into attraction towards biology, and it became a natural progression very early on. I was about, I think, 12, 11 or 12 years old when I decided I want to be a physician. So, because I was fascinated by the way life worked. And that has been my driving passion all my life. How does life work? And how does life live? And how do you help life live? That is essentially the focus of my entire life, even though I have done a vast variety of things, they are all focused on only one thing. How does life work?
I came across the term polymath, and I had heard of that term before, but I'm the type of person that wants to know. So I actually looked it up and thought, that would be a great question to ask. So again, I never really understood it till I Googled it yesterday, Dr. Google, go find out some information. Not that it's always accurate, but I read up a little bit. So I'm curious, your primary subject is medical, right? So what created your desire to learn and become proficient in other areas and become a person who can be thought of as a polymath?
Um, I didn't, the funny thing about being a polymath is not that you plan on being it, you just become one. And you become one by following a singular passion. And for me, my singular passion is uh, all things living. So, that is what brought me to being a physician. And then when I got my medical degree, I decided that I wanted to deal more and more into, in India, infectious disease is a big problem. And I was tired of seeing my patients die of tuberculosis and leprosy. So I decided to study why is it that the body uh, is unable to fight some infections and other infections it can fight off very well. And even in tuberculosis and leprosy, there were always a few patients who were able to eradicate the disease in their body, whereas the vast majority of patients could not. So my question was, what was so unique in these few rare cases where the patient would get infected with leprosy, but was able to eradicate it, or would get infected with tuberculosis and was able to eradicate it, whereas the majority of patients who got infected with either an organism could not. So that led me to getting a doctoral degree in biochemistry and molecular biology, where my work was in that. And then when I was presenting that, that landed me a fellowship at Harvard, where I did the work on understanding what regulates genes that are turned on during infection, and how does the control elements of these genes work. And that led me to my next stage of my life, where I landed a residency position in George Washington and got a license as a physician. And while I was training in George Washington, the kind of work I was doing with patients there led me to see that there was a huge gap, that American medicine was focused entirely on high-level interventions, where we would spend a lot of dollars and technology in saving a few people, but there was a huge gap in the vast number of ordinary preventative care medicine in the community level. And also there was a huge gap in elder care. So that pushed me on to becoming a primary community physician. And that then brought me to a stage where I was a director of a hospice, taking care of dying patients. And from there, I became a chairman of a hospital. So 40 years, it's been a progression at every point, following what makes life, what are the driving forces of why problems are problems, and what can we do to understand that. And while I was doing all this, I happened to get my mother was visiting me once, and she was complaining of knee pain that was keeping up at night, and she could not tolerate ibuprofen. So because I had my chemistry knowledge, I compounded a liniment in my kitchen using herbs and spices. I extracted their essence and made a liniment, and that produced a benefit. That became very popular in the clinic, and I filed a patent for it, and then that patent then got an FDA approval as a drug. And then one of my dogs got injured, and the same liniment, I modified it for using dogs. So then it became a veterinary medicine. So at every point, there was always a biological problem, and I addressed it using whatever tools I had either at my disposal, or I went out and learned those tools. I went out and acquired a command of those tools. And then when the medicines I made for both humans and dogs became popular, a couple of people I knew convinced me that I should start a company. So they joined with me, and we formed a company, and that is now doing reasonably well as Active Power Incorporated. And in this way, I became a polymath. It's not it's not like I got up in the morning and said, I'm going to become a polymath. My polymath qualities of acquisition of knowledge in the pharmaceutical, setting up of manufacturing facilities, understanding regulatory guidelines, understanding how vaccines are made, understanding how immunology works, understanding research, understanding primary care, understanding how hospitals will work, how to deliver medicine at the community level, as well as the institutional level, understanding how end-of-life care works. All of this is driven out of a single passion, and that is, how does life work? And how do you make life work when life does not work? See, every time a patient comes to me, he's not coming to me to fix a disease. He's coming to me to help him live better. There is something that's happening today in his life that is preventing him from enjoying life the way he wants to enjoy it. And he's coming to me and saying, Doc, how can you make me live better? And I just use my tools to find a way where either I remove the problem, or if that problem cannot be removed, I try to reduce its intensity, or if its intensity is not capable of being reduced, then I teach him how to live with it. One of these three things happen, and that's what makes me who I am.